They said they were helping me, but they were helping themselves. When the house fire took everything I owned, my sister Rachel stood in front of the cameras with tears in her eyes, talking about how devastated our family was, how we needed to come together, how every dollar would go directly to helping me rebuild my life. What she didn't mention was that she'd already picked out the vacation she wanted to take with that money. Growing up, Rachel was the golden child, Mom's favorite. Dad's pride and joy. She got the bigger bedroom, the newer clothes, the college fund that somehow never existed when it was my turn. I learned early that asking for things meant disappointment. So I stopped asking. When I graduated high school, Rachel was finishing her master's degree. When I finally scraped together enough for community college, she was buying her first house. Always one step ahead. Always taking up all the space in our parents' attention. But I made peace with it. I worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, and bought a small house in the old part of town. Nothing fancy, just mine. I painted every room myself, fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen, planted flowers in the front yard that bloomed every spring. It wasn't much, but it was the first thing I'd ever owned that no one could take away from me. Rachel visited exactly once. She walked through, making little comments about the outdated fixtures and the squeaky floors. "You could really do something with this place," and she said, like it was a project waiting for her approval. I just smiled and made her coffee in my chipped but clean kitchen. Our parents rarely visited either. Too far from their neighborhood, they said. Too much traffic. Always some excuse that boiled down to the same thing. I wasn't worth the drive, but that was okay. I had my little house, my quiet life, my books, and my garden. I didn't need their validation anymore. At least, that's what I told myself. The night of the fire, I was at work. 3rd shift at the hospital, cleaning rooms and emptying trash cans. Honest work that paid just enough to keep the lights on and the mortgage current. My phone rang at 2:47 a.m. Rachel crying so hard I could barely understand her. "The house. Oh God, your house." I drove home in a blur of streetlights and sirens still echoing in the distance. The fire trucks were pulling away when I got there. What was left of my home looked like a skeleton against the night sky. Charred beams, melted siding. The smell of everything I'd ever owned turned to ash. The fire chief said it started with faulty wiring in the basement. Old house, old problems. The kind of thing insurance companies love to find ways not to cover. I stood there in my work scrubs, staring at the place where my front door used to be and realized I had nowhere to go. That's when Rachel became the hero of the story. "You're staying with us, Watch," Rachel announced, like it wasn't even a question. Her husband David nodded along, playing the supportive brother-in-law. "For as long as you need." Their guest room was bigger than my old bedroom growing up. Clean white walls, expensive furniture, a view of their perfectly landscaped backyard. It should have felt like a blessing. Instead, it felt like charity. Rachel threw herself into helping with an energy I'd never seen from her before. She organized my insurance claims, called contractors for estimates, even set up a meeting with a financial advisor. "We're going to get you back on your feet," she promised over dinner one night. "This is just a setback. You'll come back stronger." I wanted to believe her. For the first time in our lives, Rachel was treating me like I mattered, like I was worth her time and attention. Then she had the idea. "We should start a fundraiser," she said, scrolling through her phone at the kitchen table. "I have over 3,000 followers on social media. David's company has connections. Mom and Dad know people from their church." I felt my stomach tighten. "I don't know. I'm not comfortable asking people for money." "You're not asking," she said firmly. "We are. Family takes care of family." The way she said it, like she was doing something noble, something that would make her look good. But I was desperate. The insurance company was dragging their feet, finding every excuse to delay payment. I had $847 in my checking account and a job that barely covered basic expenses, let alone rebuilding a life. "Okay," I whispered. "If you think it will help." Rachel's face lit up like she'd won something. The GoFundMe page went live 3 days later. Rachel had written a story that made me sound like a tragic victim, complete with photos of the burned house and a picture of me looking shell-shocked in my work uniform. Help Sarah rebuild after devastating house fire. The headline read, "Every dollar goes directly to her recovery." She set the goal at $25,000. It seemed impossible. Then the donations started coming in, first from family and friends, then from Rachel's social media followers, then from complete strangers who shared the story, adding their own heartbreaking comments about loss and community support. $500, $1,200, $3,400. I watched the numbers climb with a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. People were giving their hard-earned money to help me. Some donations were just $5 or $10, with notes like, "I know what it's like to lose everything," or "wishing you strength and hope." Rachel managed everything. She responded to comments, shared updates, even organized a bake sale at David's office. She was everywhere. Local news interviews, Facebook posts, community meetings. "This is what family does," she told the reporter from Channel 7, wiping away a tear. "We don't leave anyone behind." I stayed in the background, grateful but uncomfortable with all the attention. Every time someone congratulated me on having such a caring sister, I just nodded and smiled. By the end of the first month, we'd raised $18,000. By the end of the second month, we hit the $25,000 goal and kept going. $27,892 from 312 donors who believed they were helping me start over. "This is incredible," I told Rachel one morning, staring at the GoFundMe page on her laptop. "I can't believe how generous people are." She closed the laptop quickly. "I know, it's overwhelming, isn't it? Let me handle all the details so you can focus on healing." Something in her voice made me pause, but I pushed the feeling down. She was my sister. She was helping me. Why was I looking for problems where none existed? 3 months after the fire, I still hadn't seen a penny of the fundraiser money. Every time I asked Rachel about it, she had an excuse. The GoFundMe platform took time to process large amounts. She was waiting for the best moment to transfer everything. She wanted to make sure I was emotionally ready to handle the responsibility of rebuilding. "These things are complicated," she'd say, patting my hand like I was a child. "Trust me, I'm taking care of everything." But I was getting desperate. My insurance company had finally agreed to a settlement. $11,000 for a house I'd paid $89,000 for. It would barely cover a deposit on a rental apartment, let alone rebuilding my life. I needed that fundraiser money, the money that 312 strangers had donated specifically to help me. That's when I started paying attention. Rachel had new highlights in her hair, expensive ones that cost more than I made in a week. David was driving a different car, a BMW that definitely wasn't in their driveway 3 months ago. And their kitchen. When had they renovated their kitchen? "Oh, that," Rachel said when I commented on the new granite countertops. "We've been planning that for months. Just a coincidence that we finally got around to it." But the timing felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. I started watching more carefully. The designer handbags Rachel carried, the weekend trips to wine country she posted about on Instagram, the family vacation to Hawaii they booked for Christmas. "Business has been really good for David lately," she explained when I asked about the Hawaii trip. "We deserve a little break after all this stress." Stress? Like my house burning down had been stressful for her. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in November. I was looking for a phone charger in Rachel's kitchen drawer when I found the bank statements. Just sitting there, mixed in with takeout menus and grocery lists. David's checking account. 2 deposits from GoFundMe incurred $15,000 on October 3rd, $12,892 on October 15th. My hands started shaking as I stared at the numbers. Nearly $28,000. All of it deposited into David's personal account. None of it in my name. I heard Rachel's car in the driveway and quickly put the statements back, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. She walked in carrying shopping bags from expensive stores, humming some cheerful song. "Rachel," I said, my voice barely steady, "I need to ask you about the fundraiser money." She set down her bags and looked at me with that patient, condescending expression I remembered from childhood. "What about it? When am I going to receive it?" "Soon," she said, pulling organic groceries from her bags, Groceries that cost more than my weekly food budget. I told you these things take time. How much time? She paused, a container of expensive Greek yogurt in her hand. Why are you being so pushy about this? I'm handling it. I saw the bank statements. The yogurt slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Rachel's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, anger, and finally, calculation. You went through my things? They were in the kitchen drawer. I was looking for a charger. That's private information. It's my money, Rachel. She straightened up, and suddenly she wasn't my caring big sister anymore. She was someone else entirely. Actually, it's not, she said coldly. That money was donated to our family to help with this crisis. I'm managing it responsibly instead of just handing you a check you'd probably waste on the first apartment you found. I felt like the ground was shifting under my feet. Waste? Rachel, I'm living in your guest room. I have nothing. People donated that money specifically to help me rebuild my life. And I'm helping you rebuild. You have a roof over your head, food on the table, people who care about you. Maybe if you showed a little gratitude instead of acting entitled. Entitled? The word came out louder than I intended. To money that was raised in my name? For my house that burned down? Rachel's eyes narrowed. Lower your voice. David will be home soon. But I couldn't lower my voice. Months of confusion and discomfort were finally making sense. You stole from me, I said. You stole from everyone who donated. I didn't steal anything. I managed a crisis. Do you have any idea how much work I put into that fundraiser? The interviews, the social media posts, the organization? I deserved compensation. Compensation? I stared at her, this person I'd shared a childhood with, who I'd trusted with everything. You bought a new kitchen and a car and a vacation. We've been under a lot of stress dealing with your situation. Your situation. Like my life falling apart was an inconvenience she'd been managing. Those people donated to help me, I said, my voice getting quieter but harder. Not to fund your stress relief. Rachel crossed her arms. Well, it's done now. The money's been used to help our family get through this difficult time. You can stay here as long as you need, but I'm not going to be guilt-tripped about how I chose to manage a crisis. She picked up her shopping bags and walked toward the stairs, then paused. Maybe this is a lesson about being more self-sufficient, she said without looking back. You're 32 years old. It's time to stop expecting other people to save you. I stood alone in that beautiful kitchen, surrounded by the life she'd built with money donated in my name, and finally understood who my sister really was. She'd never been helping me. She'd been helping herself to me. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I lay in Rachel's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling something cold and clear settling in my chest. Not anger, not hurt. Something more focused than that. I started planning. First, I screenshot every post from the GoFundMe page, every update Rachel had shared, every comment from donors, every promise about where the money would go. Then I gathered evidence. Photos of their new kitchen, their new car, their Hawaii vacation posts. I printed David's bank statements. They'd left them right there in the drawer, probably never imagining I'd look twice. I documented everything with the methodical patience of someone who had nothing left to lose. The hardest part was staying silent, acting normal, pretending I didn't know what they'd done while I lived under their roof, eating their food, watching them enjoy the life they'd built on other people's generosity. But I'd learned patience in that house growing up. I knew how to wait. It took me 2 weeks to put everything together. A complete timeline with screenshots, bank records, social media posts, and receipts. A digital folder labeled The Truth About Sarah's Fund. I sent it to the local news station first, the same Channel 7 that had interviewed Rachel about the power of family and community support. Then I posted it on social media. Every platform I could think of. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I tagged every person who had shared the original fundraiser, every local business that had promoted it, every community group that had spread the word. The post was simple. 3 months ago, my sister started a fundraiser after my house burned down. She raised $27,892 from 312 generous people who wanted to help me rebuild. This is where that money actually went. Then I attached the evidence. All of it. I hit post and walked away from the computer. The response was immediate. Within 2 hours, my phone was buzzing constantly. Messages from strangers, calls from reporters, notifications that my posts were being shared hundreds, then thousands of times. Rachel called me screaming. How could you do this to our family? How could you humiliate us like this? I told the truth, I said calmly. The same truth you should have told from the beginning. You've ruined everything. David could lose his job. People are calling us criminals. You are criminals. She hung up. By evening, the story was everywhere. Local news, social media, even some national outlets that specialized in crowdfunding fraud. The original GoFundMe post was flooded with angry comments from donors demanding their money back. Channel 7 ran a follow-up story that night. Fundraiser fraud. Family keeps donations meant for fire victim. They showed Rachel's old interview talking about family support, then cut to footage of their new BMW and vacation photos. The journalist had done her homework. She'd contacted GoFundMe, who confirmed they were investigating. She'd spoken to donors who felt betrayed and used. She'd even gotten a comment from the district attorney's office about potential fraud charges. But the most satisfying part was watching Rachel's social media presence crumble in real time. Her Instagram posts flooded with comments calling her a thief. Her Facebook friends list shrinking as people unfriended her in droves. Local businesses distancing themselves from someone they'd previously celebrated. The community that had rallied around helping Sarah was now rallying around holding Rachel accountable. GoFundMe froze the campaign and started their own investigation. Within a week, they'd ruled that the funds had been misused and issued a statement about their commitment to donor protection. But the real victory came from somewhere I didn't expect. 3 days after my post went viral, I got a call from a woman named Jennifer Martinez. She'd seen the news story and wanted to help, not with money, but with something better. She worked for a nonprofit that helped disaster victims navigate insurance claims and rebuild their lives. She dealt with dozens of cases like mine, where insurance companies dragged their feet and people fell through the cracks. What they did to you was wrong, she said. But more than that, what your insurance company did was also wrong. Let me help you fight them properly. Within 2 weeks, Jennifer had gotten my insurance settlement increased from $11,000 to $47,000. Not by begging or pleading, but by knowing exactly which laws they were violating and which pressure points would make them pay attention. Insurance companies count on people not knowing their rights, she explained. They make lowball offers hoping you'll take them and go away. But you had replacement cost coverage. They owed you replacement cost. The donations started coming in again, too. Not to a fundraiser this time, but directly to me. People who'd heard the story and wanted to help for real. Small amounts mostly, but given freely by people who knew exactly where their money was going. $50 from Maria, who'd lost her apartment in a flood. $25 from Tom, who'd survived a house fire himself. $100 from the women's group at the Methodist Church who'd been following the story. Real help from real people who weren't looking for recognition or tax write-offs. Just neighbors helping a neighbor. By Christmas, I had enough to put a down payment on a small apartment and start rebuilding my life. Not the life I'd lost, but a new one. A better one. One that didn't depend on anyone's approval or charity. I never got the fundraiser money back. Rachel and David eventually returned some of it after the district attorney started asking questions, but most had already been spent on things that couldn't be undone. That's okay. I didn't need their money anymore. What I needed was to understand something about myself and about the people I'd called family for 32 years. I'd spent my whole life believing that love meant accepting scraps. That family meant being grateful for whatever attention or help came my way, even when it came with conditions and costs I couldn't see. But real help, the kind Jennifer offered, the kind those strangers on the internet offered, doesn't come with strings attached. It doesn't require you to be grateful in a specific way, or to stay quiet about problems, or to pretend everything is fine when it's not. Real help comes from people who actually want to help. Rachel had never wanted to help me. She'd wanted to help herself to the feeling of being a hero. The attention, the praise, the opportunity to be the center of a heartwarming story about family bonds and community spirit. I was just the prop that made her story possible. But when I stopped playing that role, when I told the truth about what really happened, something interesting occurred. The same community that had supported Rachel's version of the story showed up to support mine. Because most people actually do want to help. They just want to know their help is going where they think it's going. I live in a different town now, about an hour away from Rachel and David. Far enough that we don't accidentally run into each other. Close enough that our parents can maintain the fiction that we're all still one big happy family. They never talk about what happened. In their version of events, Rachel and I had a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. They still see her every Sunday for dinner. They've visited my new apartment exactly once. But that's fine. I know who I can count on now, and it's not the people who share my DNA. It's Jennifer, who still calls every few months to check on me. It's my new neighbors who brought cookies when I moved in and didn't ask for my life story in return. It's the people who donated $5 or $10 because they wanted to help a stranger rebuild her life with no expectation of recognition or gratitude. Sometimes I think about those 312 people who donated to Rachel's fundraiser. How many of them thought they were saving someone like me? How many had their own stories of loss and recovery that made them want to reach out to a stranger? Rachel stole from all of us. Not just the money, but the trust. The belief that when people say they want to help, they actually mean it. But most people do mean it. That's what I learned from all of this. The ones who don't, well, they usually tell on themselves eventually. You just have to be paying attention.